And so I went into it like not expecting too much, but even those low expectations were not met. So yeah. Hello everybody, it's Sarah. Welcome back. Today I'm here to talk to you about my most disappointing books of 2020. So last week I talked about my favorite books of 2020. If you are looking for something that is going to be way more positive than this video, I would definitely go and check that out. I will make sure to link it up here on the screen for all of you. But yeah, today I wanted to talk about books that just were not for me in 2020. I have read a lot of books last year, and out of all of them, those are the ones that stood out to me because of how, well, disappointed I was with them, which is very sad, but you know, it always happens. And I always enjoy to talk about the books that I did not like as much as I enjoy to talk about the books that I loved. So this video, I think, hopefully is going to be interesting. So I'm going to be listing those books in the order that I read them, and to kick things off with a bang, I'm starting with, I think, what is a very unpopular opinion, and that is that I did not really enjoy The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I know, shame on me, it's sad, but it is what it is. So one of the main reasons why I found this book so disappointing, I think, is because the way that it was described to me was not actually what the book was truly going to be about. And this book is supposed to be about this guy who goes into this hidden library and he finds this book by this author that he has never heard of before, and he reads the book, falls in love with it, becomes his favorite book of all time, and he is trying to find other books written by this author, but he finds out quickly that all of the other books by this same author have been destroyed. And so he starts to investigate and trying to find out why that is, and this premise sounded absolutely amazing to me. Also, I had heard from so many people that, you know, if you love books about books, you need to read this one, and obviously I do. It's like one of my favorite things in books, and I just did not find that this book was truly about books as much as I was anticipating, and it was also much more of a mystery than like a fantasy weird tale. Also, another thing that really bothered me about this book is how incredibly sexist some of the characters are. I have a lot of trouble dealing with sexism in books that is never addressed, and that is basically what happens throughout this entire freaking novel, and it was pissing me off so much that it was literally disconnecting me from the story every single time, and I could not even like enjoy my time reading this book because in almost every single chapter of this book a male character would do something or say something that would piss me off so bad that I couldn't deal with it. This book has also been praised for its very beautiful and atmospheric writing, and I can definitely see that. But for me, that like beautiful atmosphere and that beautiful writing was constantly being ruined by those characters being completely disgusting. So I couldn't really get immersed into the story because every single time it would just like throw me off completely and I would just get annoyed. So definitely this book was one of my most disappointing ones that I read this year. I got this book as a gift last year, so that's why I'm holding on to it, and also because I have now tiered out pages that I use in my bullet journal from this book, so I can't even like give it away, so I'm just going to keep it and keep on tearing out pages because that is the only way that I can, you know, find a little bit of satisfaction with this book. And it's just fun to tear out the pages of a book that you didn't really like. So, you know, hot tip. Then the next book that I want to talk about is La Belle Sauvage by Philip Pullman. This is the first book into the second trilogy set into the His Dark Materials world, universe, however it's called. And I had reread His Dark Materials the year before in 2019, so I decided in 2020 that I wanted to start the second trilogy. I went into this book not expecting too much of it because I knew that this one is kind of like a prequel to His Dark Materials, and it takes place when Lyra, who is the main character in that trilogy, is a baby, and it follows like a completely different character. And so I went into it like not expecting too much, but even those low expectations were not met. So yeah. I don't even really remember the plot or even like the synopsis of what this book is supposed to be about. I know there's like a boat and a little guy who is the main character that we follow, and at some point he crosses paths with Lyra. And that is all I remember, because honestly, this book was so boring. I really did not enjoy it, and when I first read it, I tried to find some positive things to say about it, but now that I'm thinking back on it, I don't even remember what this book was about. I don't know what the point of this book was about, because truly there was no point whatsoever. It did not even make me want to keep on going with the second trilogy. Like, I finished that book and I was like, do I read The Secret Commonwealth? No. And I was always so intrigued because I always wanted to know what it would be like to follow Lyra as an adult, so that gives you an idea of how disappointing that book was. It was so boring. There was no flavor. There was like a little bit of action, but for most of the time, from what I remember, they were like in a boat on a river going nowhere. There was a flood, and even that wasn't like entertaining enough. It's just, it was just bad. It was just so bad. The next book is also going to be a very, very unpopular opinion, and I am the first one being disappointed that I did not enjoy this book. And that book is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Oh boy. This book is one of those books that so many people absolutely adore and that I really, really wanted to love too. In case you don't know, this is like the dark academia novel. Like, everybody who loves dark academia as an aesthetic, as books, as films, everybody is obsessed with this book. I did not really like it. I think that when it comes to this book, I love the concept and I really disliked the execution. This book, in case you don't know, is this kind of like, you know, murder mystery with a lot of terrible people, terrible characters who do awful things. They're very pretentious. They're studying the classics. They're like trying to find a new way to see life and perceive existence or whatever. Like, and they're like friends, but they also hate each other, but they also love each other too much, and then one day they just commit murder. I think one of the main reasons why I found this book so disappointing is because I had such high expectations going into it, and let's be real, this book is like super hyped. Everybody raves about it constantly, and so many people had told me personally that I was really going to enjoy it. So I went into it and like the beginning was interesting. I was intrigued, and then for a large chunk of it, nothing happened. And then the last third of the book is where all of the action happens, and it just, you know, everything, the shit hits the fan, basically. And that part I kind of liked, but also it wasn't very satisfying because of all of that time that I had spent reading that book, feeling like I was going absolutely nowhere. Also, the characters were not interesting enough for me to be entertained. You know, like in Dark Academia, it is very frequent that you will come across terrible, awful characters who are just disgusting human beings, but you still love to see like how they're going to act and what they're going to say. But those characters were just so boring. I didn't connect to any of them at all either, because you know, sometimes you read about these terrible characters, but you still find something that they have that you connect with and that you can kind of like understand, so you can kind of understand their motivations. I did not understand any of those characters at all. I found all of them completely ridiculous. So many of their conflicts were completely pointless, and I just couldn't really be interested in reading about them. So yeah, overall, The Secret History, I don't get it. I don't get why everybody is obsessed with this book. If you are, that's honestly perfectly fine. It's great for you, but it was just a major disappointment for me. It was so long. I felt like it was never going to end. Then the next book that I want to talk about is another one that I'm so sad that I did not enjoy, because I really, really wanted to love this series. And that book is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. I am really giving you all of the unpopular opinions today because this book is the first book into such a beloved fantasy series. And the premise of this one is that we follow our main character Nari, who lives in Cairo in ancient Egypt, and one day, without meaning to, she accidentally wakes up a war djinn. And so she goes on all of those different adventures, and there's a lot of like political backstabbing, there's a lot of like mythological creatures that are just so fascinating, and just I really loved most of this book, which is what is truly heartbreaking, because the one thing that I just couldn't really deal with when it comes to this book is the world building, because I found that it was just so complicated, and I'm not normally bad at like keeping up with world building in fantasy because I read a lot of fantasy. So at this point I kind of know like how to get my bearings. I had to keep on going back into the book to reread all of the explanations for the world building because I kept on being completely confused, to the point where, and I was buddy reading this book with Izzy from Izzy's Buzzy Reading, we were basically sending each other voice messages on Instagram explaining to one another the world building as we understood it. Like, it was to that point. So truly, it was kind of hilarious and also great bonding for Izzy and I, but it was also very frustrating because the more that we made progress into the story, the more confusing it became, and so it just wasn't really entertaining anymore. I was still kind of entertained by the story because of the characters and the plot, which were some of my favorite parts, but yeah, overall, it was still kind of disappointing, and I am so sad that I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would. Then the next disappointing book on this list is The Kingdom of Back by Mary Lou. We read this book last year with the TWOCC book club, and honestly, if it hadn't been for the book club, I would have probably DNF'd it at some point. And in case you don't know, in this book, Mary Lou tells the story of Mozart's sister, whose name I don't remember, and I'm going to look it up because I don't want to refer to her as Mozart's sister. Her name is Nannerl, and basically she is his older sister, but she's constantly put into his shadow because of Mozart's incredible talent, and because as a woman she couldn't really pursue music as a career. And so basically in this book we follow her and her relationship with her brother, and also what it felt like for her to be constantly kept away from her dreams of just being a musician. But we also follow the two Mozart siblings as they start to imagine this very whimsical place called the Kingdom of Back, until one day they are visited by this very mysterious prince who actually takes them there. And this book was really a disappointment for me for a lot of reasons. The main one being that I was hoping for like this historical fiction feminist tale talking about this woman that not a lot of people know about because she was basically erased from history, and it's not really what I got. And it's mainly because of the ending that I didn't really love that part of the book, because Mary Lou kind of finds a way to, you know, make us believe that Nannerl is not really forgotten from history, but at the same time she kind of doesn't. And I don't want to spoil the book, I don't want to tell you what happens, but it was just very, very disappointing to me. And you know, there was just like so much more potential with this second world that she created that could have made this book so much more significant and impactful, but Mary Lou decided to like not go down that road that was just like so interesting to me. And like, it's fine, it's her book, she can definitely decide what she wants to do. But then also talking about this fantasy world, it was really lacking world building in my opinion. It didn't have a lot of depth, and there was also this kind of like romance plotline in there that just didn't really go anywhere and wasn't really necessary in my opinion. So yeah, just overall this book was pretty underwhelming, pretty disappointing, and I did not really enjoy it. Alright, so there we are. Those were my most disappointing books of 2020. Not a long list, but also a lot of controversial opinions in there. So I hope that you found this interesting. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!